Chapter 4. The 2-hour return trip home provided me lots of time to think. And as it sometimes happens, the more I thought, the further I pushed the job and what getting it meant for my family into the back of my mind. As much as I hate to admit it, Gordana's comment about punctuality was a valid point that exposed flaws that needed some rethinking. For one, finding a way to ride the bus was essential. It was possible to make it on the Phantom, yes, but in order to be on time, I'd have to leave my house before dawn and probably be too exhausted to even work. Plus, I barely survived the trip one day. Doing it 5 days a week might put me in an early grave, and I'd be no good to anybody dead. Another issue was that now I'd have to lie more and keep them steady. It was hard enough doing it for the past day or two just to get this far. I realized getting this job complicated everything way beyond a comfortable stress level. I couldn't pull this off on my own. I needed help. Given the circumstances, I felt that there was only one person I could count on, one person I could trust with my secret, my old pal Crocker. Seeing as to how I involuntarily made him part of my lie, I might as well make him part of my solution. Crocker's bedroom was in the back of his house, which is perfect for when you didn't have the time or the want to deal with his overly hospitable mother. I rolled my bike right up to his window and found him exactly where I assumed he'd be, with his secret love, Wonder Woman, and a big plate of chocolate chip cookies. If I wasn't barely holding myself up on the window pane, I would have found the plate of cookies soaring through the air as he scrambled to open it when I knocked, absolutely hilarious. "You nearly gave me a dang heart attack," he exclaimed before getting a good look at my condition. What the heck happened to you?" "Get your poles," I answered. Puzzled, he asked, "Well, sure, but, why?" "Just get your poles," I ordered more sternly. "It's an emergency. I'll explain everything when we get to my house." "Okay, buddy, just take it easy," he said, trying to stall while he picked up his spilled cookies. "We need to go," I barked, losing patience. "My mama's gonna kill me if I get chocolate on this floor again." He fired back with a full mouth, eating more than he was saving. Once Crocker ate his room clean to satisfaction, we converged in the front yard, and soon we were off to my house. I don't know where it came from, but through the burning in my legs, a second, or maybe it was a fourth wind, propelled me so far ahead of Crocker, we had to yell to communicate. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" he asked. "Not yet," I answered. "Are we going fishing?" He asked in a hopeful tone. "Crocker," I snapped, hoping he would take the hint and shut up. He didn't make a peep for the rest of the ride. Instead, he serenaded me with heavy breathing and wheezes as he struggled to keep up. Fortunately, when we reached the gate, we could see that the car was gone. Perhaps Dad had taken Lottie shopping for the fencing material he mentioned earlier. Regardless, this made it easier to slip into the house. While entering, I kept Crocker's body in front of me in an attempt to hide my stained clothes from anyone who'd care. Like my mom, for instance, who was seated in the living room with her nose in a good housekeeping, and stopped us before we could reach the safe haven of my room. "Hi there, boys," she greeted, looking up from her magazine. "Hello, Mrs. Adams," Crocker replied promptly. "Any bites today?" she asked. "Oh, but we didn't," he began to say. "Catch anything," I finished for him while elbowing him in the ribs. No bites, not even a nibble. Must not have been hungry, she replied, turning her attention back to her reading. Must not have, I echoed before shoving Crocker into my room. What's going on with you, Laken? He exclaimed as he stumbled in, clearly agitated about his ribs. First you show up unannounced, looking like heck. Then you drag me here without telling me why. You better start talking. I'm in a bit of trouble, I said, while closing the door so Mom couldn't hear our conversation. My dad lost his job on Friday. Oh yeah, my mom told me about that. I was going to talk to you about it, but I didn't know how to bring it up, he responded. I acknowledged his sympathy, but kept talking. It's only been 2 days, but he's struggling to find work, and it doesn't look good. So, what are you going to do? He asked, with concern, while taking a seat on Lottie's bed. This is actually about what I already did. I paused and waited for a reaction, but when Crocker donned an intrigued expression, I knew I had to continue. Look, this is a secret that has to stay between you and me, all right? No one else knows. Yeah, sure, of course. Green Lantern's honor, he said with his hand raised like a Boy Scout. I'm not sure if the sigh I gave was in response to his nerdiness or the fact that I was about to share my secret for the first time out loud, but eventually it spilled out. I went and got a job. You have got to be kidding me, he said louder than he should have. If your dad finds out, keep it down, would you? Mom will hear you, I snapped before returning to my calm tone. Excuse me. I know it's crazy, but I couldn't just sit around, you know? Yeah, I understand, he responded maturely. So, where is it? Ottersboro, I answered directly. Ottersboro. He seemed to pause as though he was testing how the word sat in his mouth. What would make you want to go all the way down there? Caretaking for the elderly. I rode my bike to and from the interview with the lady earlier today. It's why I look so swell, I replied sarcastically. Crocker chuckled, not thinking his next comment would mean anything. I bet it would have been a lot easier if you could afford to take the bus. He realized his mistake when I met him with a greedy smile, which saw him attempting to backtrack in urgency. Oh, no, you don't. I know that look. You're not getting a dime out of me. Come on, be a pal, I begged as I stepped closer. There's not a lot to go around, and I need it to last until I get paid again, he pleaded as he rose to leave. You know I'm good for it, I said as I stepped in front of him, blocking his escape. Once I start making money from this job, you'll have it back in spades. I don't know, Laken, he said hesitantly. I knew I was losing him fast. Nothing I could say would persuade him now, unless I were to take advantage of an obvious weak spot. What would all those superheroes you read about do if a citizen came to them in need? It was a low thing to do. He knew it, I knew it, but I could tell it rattled him. Come on, turn out your pockets for a friend. Knowing he couldn't argue with the point I made, Crocker relented. Rolling his eyes, he reached into his pockets and placed 30 cents in my hand. Here, this is all I have. Well, it's one day I won't have to ride my bike, I commented in fleeting relief. I'm sorry I couldn't help more, he said, sounding disappointed in himself. Trying to lighten the mood, I did my best banker impression and wrapped an arm around his neck. Nonsense, my dear Crocker. Your contribution is more than generous, and I thank you for your investment in the latest Laken Adams business venture. You are a gentleman and a scholar. Yeah, well, is that why you brought me here, to rob me? He asked, clearly in no mood for jokes. Partly, but not just, I answered slickly. There's one more thing I need your help with." "Oh, great. How much is this going to cost me?" he asked in annoyance. "Nothing. I just need your help," I reiterated before continuing. "See, I'll be in Ottersboro full time. And while my parents may not notice at first, eventually they'll get suspicious of where I go all day. So," Crocker cut me off, knowing exactly what I was getting at. No, absolutely not. I'd do just about anything for you, but lying to your parents is definitely not one." "Well, technically, you already have," I countered. "What do you mean?" he asked, afraid of the answer. The longer he went without one, the more frantic he got, when the truth finally sunk in. "Aw, the fishing? What did you have to go and do that for?" "Shh! I don't know. I was in a pinch and you were the first person I thought of. Makes for a believable story," I whispered. "Look, if my parents or your mom or anybody else asks, all you have to do is tell them that we're together. I don't care what excuse you use. Just make sure they don't know what I'm up to." "Why am I always the one that has to do the dirty work?" he asked in almost a whiny tone. "Because it's an important task, and you're the only one I trust to do it," I responded, trying to restore his confidence. "You're a bit hung up on the lying part. So think of it as Batman lying to hide his true identity from Gotham. Better yet, think of it as Robin lying to protect Batman's identity. A completely noble and justifiable reason, right?" Once again, I could see that my use of his superhero logic against him was turning the tide in my favor. Before Crocker could give in, though, my dad's voice rang out and grabbed our attention. "Boys, I could use some strong backs and weak minds," he joked. There was no way I was letting Crocker leave that room without some sort of confirmation, but the noticeable size difference between us made him difficult to stop. All I could do was reach for his hand and hope for the best. "Please, Crocker, I need this." I begged him. I like to think that it was my puppy dog eyes that pushed him over the edge, but nonetheless he responded with a weak smile and succumbed to my wishes. I was so electrified by my victory that I practically jumped into his arms. "I love you, you big lug," I exclaimed, after planting a big, wet kiss on his forehead. We laughed as he wiped it away, and I eagerly led the way outside. My delight carried me with such speed, everything I passed was blurred, except for one small shape that brought a slight pause. As if frozen in time, Lottie sat at the table, her face pale with sorrow. While this was an expression I understood lately, I assumed that she misbehaved in town with Dad and had been punished. The longer I watched her eyes droop, and her head sink in shame, though, the more I began to wonder. It took the remainder of the day for the three of us to replace the fence, and after paying Crocker for his help with dinner, in which he got to witness my dad getting in trouble for the condition of my clothes, we sent him on his way, and soon it was time for our annual story. Lottie kept to herself at dinner. This was unusual, since she never ran out of things to say when Crocker was over, and she brought this behavior into bed. For the first time ever, the tiny turtle was of no interest to her. I looked up from the book upon finishing to find her blankly staring at the door, a hand on Andy's shell. It was obvious she was in deep thought about something, and although I hated to interrupt her, I had to know what was pulling her so far away. "Penny for your thoughts?" I asked softly. You could physically see her snap back into her body. "How do you draw a job?" she asked curiously. "What do you mean?" I chuckled. "Daddy's lost job," she reiterated. I leaned forward in my chair, realizing abruptly that this wasn't a time for Lottie to be laughed off. "Where did you hear that?" I asked, taking a serious tone. "From you," she answered, before elaborating. "I wanted to get Andy out of our room when me and Daddy got home. That's when I heard you talking to Crocker about Daddy losing his job, and then you asked him for money. I thought if we drew a picture of Daddy's missing job and put them up all around, someone might know where he left it, and he'll be able to find it." I didn't know how to feel. I'd been caught red-handed. I suppose I could have been upset with her eavesdropping, but I could see how proud she was of her plan to help Dad, and I just didn't have the heart to scold her. Plus, with the logic she used, I guessed that my secret was still safe. But Lottie isn't stupid. She knew what she heard, and I couldn't lie my way out of it. I needed to stay calm and explain things in a way she might understand. "I'm afraid it doesn't work like that, little one," I corrected. "See, Dad didn't just misplace his job. It's gone forever. So, while he's searching high and low for a new one, I got a job to make sure we have things like food in our bellies and a warm, safe place for you and Andy to sleep." "Well, why don't you give Daddy the job you found?" she asked innocently. "The thing of it is, Dad is the only one who can find a job that he likes. So no matter how much we may want to help him, we can't," I answered. She rebounded with another question. "Well, if we can't help him find one, what can we do?" You can help by keeping my job a secret," I replied. "Only me, Crocker, and now you know about it. So you can't tell anyone. That means not Mommy, not Daddy, or anyone else, because if they find out..." Excuse me. "Because if they find out, I could get in a lot of trouble," I explained. "Got it," she replied firmly, before asking, "But why did Crocker give you that money?" "Because my job is far away. He gave me just enough to ride the bus there tomorrow." After a huff, and a moment of hard deliberation, Lottie crawled out from underneath her blankets, put Andy in his home gently, and proceeded to look for something under her bed. As more and more of her started to disappear, I thought I was going to have to grab her by the ankles and pull her out if her voyage became too dangerous. Finally, she slithered out with a small porcelain pig tucked under her arm. This piggy bank was a gift she got from our paternal grandma a couple of years prior. With everything from birthday and Christmas money to tooth money and any spare coins we found around going in there, she amassed quite an impressive sum for such a youngster. That pig was the only thing more precious to her than Andy. "Keeping secrets is fun, but I want to do more," she declared, holding it out in front of me. "No, Lottie, I can't take that. That's your piggy with your money," I refused. "Granny told me to save it up for something good. Helping you help Daddy is good," she said with zero hesitation. I could see that her mind was made up, and there would be no changing it. So, against my better judgment, I took the pig into my hands and prepared for its execution. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "I'm sure," she echoed, giddy with anticipation. It was settled. The porcelain pig's sentence was to be carried out. After a mental 3 count that was full of procrastination, I let it slip from my fingers, and it meant a loud but humane end. Lottie's gleeful giggles kept the crash from waking the dead. But that didn't mean that our parents didn't hear it. As both pieces of porcelain and coins were scattered about the floor, I sprang up from my chair and put an ear to the door to make sure there were no footsteps coming this way. When it was safe, I turned my attention back to Lottie, who was digging through her fortune. "Now you can take the bus for a lot of days," she laughed as she sifted through the mess. "Yeah, I sure can," was all I could seem to respond with. I only took enough money to get by for a couple of days. I'd figure something else out once I ran dry, because I wasn't going to take a penny more from that sweet little girl. As we worked together to shovel the leftover loot into an empty cigar box I kept under my bed, I felt a little numb, almost unworthy. I just witnessed my little sister do one of the most selfless things I'd ever seen anybody do. She could have easily run out of that room after our talk and ratted me out, but instead she chose to sacrifice her beloved piggy bank just to help me out. She didn't even fully understand why. She just wanted to help in any way she could. I couldn't even form the words to say thank you, but in the absence of my gratitude, she had the final words. As I finished tucking her in, she said with a sleepy smile, "This will be our secret, too." That's going to wrap this episode up, guys. Like I said, basically 2 videos in the same day, as you can clearly see. So if you haven't seen chapter 3 yet, go ahead and watch that one. I definitely would hope that you've been keeping track and didn't start with chapter 4, but nevertheless, bit of an awkward ending here for me, but I hope you enjoyed it and come back for the next duo of chapters or a couple of videos, whichever comes first. Well, we'll see you next time, guys.